Madness is not your typical pitch competition. We think of ourselves as a sporting event that just happens to have startup founders in it. So I'm going to do my best impression of a not-so-talented Jim Nance, and you all are going to be the talented fan base that the Miami Dolphins wish they had. So when I announce our founders, I need a lot of energy. I need some clapping. All right? I need some yelling. And I definitely need some foot stomping. Just make sure you're cognizant of the people around you. Because today, we're going to have a lot of fun and hopefully do a little bit of learning. Is that okay with you all? Yeah? All right. All right, all right, all right. With all that said, let's get it started. Pitch Madness, Startup Debates, Ross Perot edition. Let's go. The format, we have 3 industry debate tracks in our first rounds. Gaming simulation, health tech, and enterprise SaaS. Both founders and judges represent these industries so that they can ask questions that dive deeper into the industry related to the topics. 3 tracks means 3 finalists, reminiscent of the 1992 presidential election featuring, you guessed it, Ross Perot. Don't worry, we won't be showing any charts or graphs throughout the debate. If you are laughing, you've just aged yourself. Our goals at Pitch Madness and key takeaways for the audience are to focus on the individual and not the idea, and to create an environment that highlights the founder's ability to think on their feet through various business situations. What is on the line here today? Founders will be competing for the following prizes. The winner gets an automatic bid into the Synapse Summit 2020 Pitch Madness tournament. Also, the winner will receive a $5,000 equity investment from Dennis Pappy and SeedFundersOrlando. One of the finalists will also receive a $25,000 equity investment option through Ben Patz and Kathy Chu of DeepWork Capital. The winner will also take home $1,500 in cold, hard cash from TriNet. Thank you, Jacinta Kendall. The winner will also get placement on Pitch List, thanks to Joe Hamilton, and along with office hours and pitch review through Venture Scale Up. And New World Angels is offering the winner a fast track to present in front of their full investment committee. Okay, moving on quickly to some of our amazing sponsors for this first debate track. Carve Communication, My Area Network, and Blue Wave Resource Partners. Let's give it up for them. You can learn more about them on our website at pitchmadness.com. And now, let's introduce some judges for our first debate track, Gaming and Simulation. Let's give a warm round of applause for Robin Cowie. Robin, come on out, Robin. Robin is a 26-year producer, veteran producer of games, movies, television, theater, theme park experiences, with his first film being The Blair Witch Project, which led to hundreds of creative endeavors, culminating in his role as director of experience technology for the global creative agency Hilo. Robert Megnod successfully founded and operated multiple businesses within the gaming and simulation world, raised 18 plus million in funding for various enterprises, has mentored 500 companies and startups, and holds multiple patents in consumer electronics, simulation, and VR. And Benjamin Knoll, Executive Director of Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy here at UCF. Former Vice President and COO at Electronic Art Studios, developing some of the world's best-known products for leading brands like EA Sports, EA Games, with top-selling products such as Madden, NFL Football, and Ultima Online. Needless to say, Benjamin is in the game. And now, what you've all been waiting for, our first set of competing founders. In the red corner, hailing from the vast virtual lands of Emerald, Sean Penny. Yep, I come around there. In the blue corner, someone who thinks of himself as Indie AF, Robert Torres. Thank you, founders. All right, Robert. Thank you. All right, founders, thank you for joining us. I want a fun debate, but no use of holograms or Fortnite dances. You'll each get a minute to respond to the question, and then I'll open it up for some back and forth banter. The winner of the coin toss will get a chance to decide if they want to take the question first or wait to respond. Sean, so what is it, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. Eddie Money. It is tails. Robert, what would you like? To go first or to respond? He will defer. Sean, you will go first.
I'll take it.
Okay. Give me 10 minutes on the shot clock, and let's get it on. First question. The future of the gaming industry will most likely consist of a ton of new and exciting technology, but some are split on what role virtual reality will play. Do you think VR will be dominant or still more of a side option?
It's a great question, and it's very relevant for me because I run a virtual reality company. So I'm going to be a little biased here with my answer. So absolutely, I think that VR is going to be dominant. But my opinion is just my opinion, right? So let's back that up with facts and statistics. So if you look at the trend of VR over the last 5 or 6 years, it's followed the exact same growth curve as the computer did in the 70s and the cell phone did initially as well. You know, a lot of people were like, we're going to have 1 billion VR users by 2020. That's just unrealistic. When a product first comes to market, like VR, it takes time to adopt. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing healthy user adoption at roughly between 20 to 40% growth rate per year. And
Sean,
that hasn't
you're going to have to wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah, that's it. That's my answer.
Robert, your response.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with Sean on that. We're seeing adoption continue to grow year over year, and I think 2020 is going to be the year of the headset.
Speak up a little bit,
Absolutely.
Robert, please.
2020 will be the year of the augmented reality and virtual reality headset. We're seeing more and more announcements for launches of new headsets at lower price points. So consumers are actually really considering these things for more and more use cases, right? So now we're talking about headsets at a $200 price point, $150 price point, where you can use these headsets to solve a vast amount of business problems. So once you lower that, that price point, you now have opened up the market to a user base that was previously untapped.
Okay, question number 2. Stadia from Google is now looming around the corner. What changes might cloud-based gaming bring, and which segment of the industry will be most effective? Robert, you take this one first.
Yeah, Google Stadia is a really exciting technology, pretty much utilizing large data networks and edge computing. This term edge computing pretty much puts the computing power on the server side, and somebody with a controller or just simply access to the internet can now have the ability to play these very technically advanced video games and experiences. So it's really not just limited to video games. Google Stadia, in my opinion, is a great opportunity to show what edge computing can actually do for the IT world.
Sean, do you agree with any of that?
I agree fully.
There's a lot of agreement going on.
I mean, he's good. Bobby and I are actually business partners, so I mean, we got a lot of the same ideologies. But cloud computing is going to completely change the way we play games. If you're not thinking about it as a game developer, you're behind. In the near future, you're going to have an old phone, or an old computer, right, running the highest end video game that's ever been to market, because there's going to be a server farm doing all the rendering and processing for you. As a VR company, we're thinking about this stuff constantly, especially when we talk about VR with cost of entry. What if you can have a $100 to $200 device that displays fidelity at anything better than you've seen to date, by far, because of cloud computing? So you got to be thinking about that. It's going to completely shift the way the industry's moving, and games and a lot of other industries as well.
Anything else to add?
Couldn't agree more.
All right, question number 3. You have to cut operational costs by 1/3 in order to make it to your launch date. Do you cut staff, cut product features, or cut marketing spend? Sean.
That's a pretty difficult question. So cutting staff and cutting product features in the games industry is basically the exact same thing. When you're making a game or you're making a product, typically the way I go about it is you have your ultimate goal of where you really want to be, and then your baseline. And then you have somewhere in the middle, which is where you usually end up. And assuming you go by that process, there's some wiggle room there for where you can move around. And you don't ever want to give up marketing dollars, especially if you're building a consumer go-to-market product. So as long as you're above your baseline, which you should be if you've done your job correctly, you can sacrifice some of your product features or your team.
Robert.
So I'll quickly say, Sean and I teach this methodology, right? You never cut marketing dollars, especially when we're taking a product to market. It doesn't matter if it's a video game, a t-shirt, it doesn't matter at all. So like you said, if you've done your job and you've planned out and you scoped well, cutting features and cutting staff are basically the same thing. But if I had to choose, we definitely cut down on features. The market is a little bit more accepting of updates. You can continue to release. Continuous releases is something that's very common, right? You open up your phone today, your phone has an update. You launch your video game today, your video game has an update. A lot of these times, these updates are rolled in with feature releases. So the market's really accepting of that. As long as you can deliver a core, solid product, never cut your marketing dollars.
Okay, 4th question. The gaming community is known for being a vocal and territorial group. When they see something they don't like, they oftentimes band together to influence outcomes. Knowing that you'll have to engage a more mainstream audience to scale, how do you manage possibly alienating your core audience and entering sellout status? Robert.
That's an interesting question. I'm a firm believer of, any publicity is good publicity. And why do I say that? Because at the end of the day, it's free marketing. You can bounce back from bad publicity, and that exposure, it puts you in a place of advantage, right? Now the goal is to bounce back. So staying true to what your message is, whether the market reacts negatively or not, I think you will find a new market within that original message.
Sean.
So this is going to be our first disagreement. So I don't think any publicity is always good publicity in the games industry. I think a great example is Blizzard Entertainment right now, if you guys are familiar with what's going on. And I don't want to get political, but the Hong Kong stuff, but it's relevant here for this specific conversation. I personally believe that, as a game company, you don't necessarily need to sell out. I think the correct approach is something like what Riot Games has done, one of the most successful games ever built to date, which is where you build your games and your culture around catering to a community. I'd argue that a company like Blizzard Entertainment would be more successful today if they didn't sell out as much as they have in the last several years. I think they're losing a lot of their core audience because they want to cater to new markets, quote unquote, sell out. And because of that, I would argue that they're moving away. I mean, Riot Games just made an announcement the other day for all the new games they're going to be doing, and they've always had a community-first approach. And tons of people are bandwagoning right now to buy their games and stop playing Blizzard. So I personally wouldn't sell out. I'd build a business model that didn't need it.
Yeah. I mean, allow me to interject there. If we're talking about Blizzard, they're owned by Tencent. A lot of people do know that, and their core market is now changing, right? If they would have gone ahead and gone against their investors in Tencent, they would have lost the opportunity to sell to a multi-billion-dollar market. Tencent would have considered pulling back. The Chinese government would have pretty much put on sanctions on Blizzard, like we have seen them do in the past. So. I think that's a really good example of kind of sticking to your core messaging and what your partners and your leadership, is guiding you to do.
Anything else you want to add there, Sean?
No.
All right. I think we'll cut it short and we'll take it over to the judges. Ed, do you want to put another 10 minutes on the clock?
All right. It's really very difficult to hear in here. If you guys could try and lower the volume just a little bit, it's really difficult to hear. So I think it was a really interesting debate. There was really only one disagreement, and that was centered around the idea of finding mind space in a crowded environment. And you guys categorized it as sellout. I don't think it's so much selling out or not selling out. For me personally, it's a question of coming up with a creative position in the marketplace. So I'm going to need to go overall with Sean. I liked his positioning of differentiating himself and finding space in the marketplace. I think creativity and taking a new approach is really what we need to go with.
Thank you, Robin. Mr. Rupert.
Nothing personal, guys, right? Right. So I took this kind of by the book. So, how well did each of them answer the questions? And on the VR side, I had to give it to Bob because I think he hit the nail on the head about the business that you're in, and that, you both own VR companies. This is not a flash in the pan for you. You're gonna rock it. So you're both gonna rock it. But Bob, you talked more about what is necessary in the industry for it to get to the next level. So I appreciated that. A lower cost of entry and so forth. On the Stadia side thing, I went with Sean because I really liked the examples you gave for that, and you gave us a better understanding, or you gave the audience a better understanding. On the operations cut thing, it was a draw because you both talked about the same thing. It's if the importance of marketing for an independent developer is crucial, and as long as your core MVP is good, then just go ahead and cut features if you have to. And then on the sellout side, I had to go with Sean again because he had the examples and he presented things in that regard. So overall, I'm going to have to go with Sean.
And Ben.
All right, so we have 2 for Sean and none for Bobby. So
We'll still,
okay,
there's an aggregate vote as
continue.
well, so.
Okay, so similar on the first question about VR, AR, I'm not sure there's going to be, I agree, lower prices are required a bit, especially on the AR side, but they're still clunky devices. And so one day, your cell phone won't be your cell phone, it'll be your eyeglasses, and your AR, VR, everything will be in your glasses. that's when you'll start really seeing the cell phone type of phenomenon take over. But until then, you know, it's specific use cases. So I kind of agreed with both on that. As far as the Stadia question, I'm not sure the audience, cloud computing and Stadia are exactly the same thing, but the idea of cloud computing and having utilities run things for us is, you know, we're not going to have 12 boxes sitting on top of our television. So we're going to have to run through utilities and such. So I agree with both there. Personally, if you believe in your features and you believe in your product, I'd go find the money before I'd start cutting people. Because otherwise you probably already made some mistakes and it's going to probably doom you, so you probably ought to look at the overall what you're doing. But if it's a third of your budget that's going to get you success and you really believe in it. So I guess your features are people, so I guess if you have to do something, that's where it goes. But I would encourage anybody to go out and try to find the extra money you need if you really believe in what you're doing. And then the last one, you know, I agree with Robin that you know, it's about the creativity. If you're making something cool, you know, you can call it a sellout or whatever, you know, people are going to buy it and use it. So it's really about making sure you stay in touch with the audience and touching new nerves as they, you know, expose themselves in the market. So I was going to give it a draw, especially over there, but I'll have to go with Bobby just to even this out a little bit. All right.
Okay. All right, so the competitor moving on to the next round will be Sean. Give it up for Sean. But thank you. Healthcare debate. Sponsors for the healthcare debate are Urban Buffalo, Florida Funders, and PPK. Thank you for being a part of this, sponsors. And our judges for this debate track. To my right, we have Josh Hamrick, Vice President of Health Edge, a private equity fund focused on healthcare. Josh is responsible for originating deals, overseeing due diligence, valuations, financing, transaction structuring, add-on acquisitions, and fundraising. Let's give it up for Josh, everyone. And Kelly Murray, CEO of MediSpeaks. She spent her career helping hospitals improve their performance and bottom lines. Now she helps young companies and startups navigate this complex and high-touch industry. Let's give it up for Kelly. And Ben Patz, Managing Partner, General Partner at DeepWork Capital, an early-stage venture capital fund focused on deploying capital in technology and life sciences in Florida. He is also a board member at UCF Research Foundation. And now for our competitors. In the red corner, this competitor is going to bring more peace of mind to parents with her product than Saturday morning yoga and matcha tea combined. Please give it up for Marianne Kilgallen. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
And in the blue corner, they call him Dual Flow Tony in the medical world, but here we call him Tony Rubin. I can just make sure it's flipped on.
Hello, hello.
Works. Awesome. Thank you both. All right. I want a clean debate. So clean you might call it sterile. And to remind you both to stay HIPAA compliant. You'll each get a crack at the question, and then I'll open it up for some back and forth. The winner of the toy toss will get a chance to kick it off or to respond. Marianne, I'll let you call it heads or tails.
Heads.
Eddie Money. You said tails? Heads.
Heads.
It is tails. Tony, what would you like?
I'll take the question.
All right, I like that. 10 minutes on the shot clock, and let's get it on. What is your value proposition to customers and or ultimately the patients? Are you increasing efficiency, decreasing cost of care, improving patient outcomes, or increasing provider revenue?
Sure, great question. Our product is a disruptive product in the catheter space years, and what we do is we reduce catheter-induced infections by 80%. Catheter-induced infection deaths are 13,000 a year, which is 1/3 the number that die from traffic accidents. So from a patient perspective, they're having a better quality of life with no infections, and because our product is purely internal, they truly have a better quality of life because they're able to go dancing, go bowling, and even have sex. From a customer point of view, which is the urologist, their patients are actually having a much better outcome, which they like. Economically, our product provides the urologist with a higher margin than the traditional product, and from an extended stakeholder point of view...
Gonna have to wrap it up, Tony. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I was just saying from an extended stakeholder point of view, our hospital partners love us because infection rates are lower, which drives a higher reimbursement rate for them, so everybody wins.
Marianne.
Wonderful. Well, our value proposition is what we're giving families. We are giving parents peace of mind knowing that they can keep an eye on their child when away from their child. Our main focus is geared towards the customer end and making sure that children are safe when they're either in a daycare setting or in a babysitter setting. What we are doing, our device is called Palm, and we are going to make sure to be proactive in preventing the daily drownings, the annual kidnappings, and the actual babysitter and daycare abuse. There's over 9 million children that enter the ER every year due to all those different elements.
Let's move in just a little bit here. All right, Tony, do you have anything to respond there?
No, I think she's a great product.
Okay. Question number 2. Healthcare is known for its laggard adoption of products, considered too far-reaching beyond traditional, widely accepting practices. How do you overcome those historical barriers during the sales cycle? Marianne.
I believe for being, especially a startup, it's critically important that you do collaboration and partnerships within your community as a starting point, such as hospitals and, for our case, pediatrician offices, and connecting the industry with our product is a launching point, is a starting point.
Tony.
From our perspective, the adoption is very easy. Urologists who are our customers are already inserting 5 million catheters a year. Our product is actually inserted the same way as a traditional catheter, except the diameter is slightly smaller. So it's actually the same process, but less intrusive. So from a perspective of adoption, all we're focusing on is better outcomes, which the data supports. Our clinical tests support that we have an 80% reduction in infection rates and a 400% higher flow rates. The actual implementation is exactly the same as they've been doing for years. So there's no barrier or nothing new to learn.
Anything to add?
No, it sounds great.
Question number 3. Is domain expertise overvalued or undervalued in the healthcare industry? Tony.
I have a little bit of a challenge understanding what you mean by domain, but if it's saying that if the ability to focus on a particular area, I think healthcare is so diverse with respect to populations and how it's distributed, the ability to really go deep and understand your customers, your patients, your distribution channels are essential because your product and the way you do it may be dramatically different than how you would do it to a different population. So I think being able to have a deep knowledge, a deep expertise within your domain, your ecosystem is absolutely key.
Marianne.
I do believe that it's very important for the basic patient, the customer, the end user, to have an easier access point. There's too much red tape in the industry, and there's countless stories of people that go through so much stress just to get the healthcare they need. And if we can ease up on the red tape and all the nonsense that goes with it, politics mainly, I think that we can actually be better there for the end consumer, for the patients.
Tony, anything more?
No.
Question number 4. As you look into the future of healthcare, how will your companies stay agile and relevant while balancing the production of faster, better products without losing control, resulting potentially in harm to patients and customers? Marianne.
Well, I really believe that in our industry, faster and better is not the best thing. It's very critical that when a company launches any product, that the slower the better in the beginning, because you really want to make sure you touch all the points and you cover everything. As far as our product, we actually have to have extensive juvenile testing before we can go to market. So sometimes slower is better. R&D is crucial in our industry, and I think there's plenty of time to ramp up and speed up once you launch.
Tony.
Sure. Our company was built for the sole purpose of commercializing our Blue Halo coil catheter. So with respect to changes, we're solving an 80-year-old problem, which is chronic infection and infection-related deaths, and we're doing it in a truly disruptive way. And our business model is focused on being able to prove our technology through clinical studies, securing our IP, which we've already done, and commercializing the product, which basically means penetrating 100 urologists, less than 1% of the market, and having them insert 20 catheters a month, less than half of what they usually do, which will give us a company on the road to a $10 million valuation, at which time we will sell. So we are laser focused on accomplishing one thing. The problems existed for decades, is widely known, and isn't going to change in the near term. So when we execute on our solution, we've really solved a problem and created value for our patients, for our healthcare provider customers, doctors, hospitals, even medical malpractice communities, and then we will monetize to an appropriate person to take it to global distribution and a 20 to 30% market share.
Okay. Anything to add there?
Absolutely. Our total addressable market is very strong. There's over 34 million children under the age of 10, and 21 million of those children are in a daily daycare setting. So our main focus, our vision, and our number one priority is to save children in the United States and eventually worldwide.
Anything to add, Tony?
No, definitely a worthy goal and a worthy solution.
Okay, we'll cut it short and take it over to the judges. Josh.
Great job by both of you. I think they're two great businesses. You both did a great job. Obviously, two very different types of devices, which makes this, very interesting. Can you hear me? For the first question, I think, Tony, you did a great job articulating your value proposition. Healthcare is, in my opinion, the most complex industry or sector that we're going to be talking about today. So your value propositions are very different from other subsectors because you're always battling the complexity of the payer system. For you, probably the regulatory framework that you're working through against other products and getting through that process to commercialize. I think you articulated very well how you're doing that and how you're making care better for the patient, how you're going to go through your different channels that are unique to your business, and also how you're going to solve an issue for the specialists and physicians in that space. I think you did a great job as well, Marianne, talking about how your product is truly new, unique, and innovative, and you're solving a problem that most people that have a family in this country are facing. I would say that Tony edged you out on the first question, so my vote goes to Tony on the first one. The second question is on the adoption of technology and innovation. I think for you, Marianne, I would have liked to hear more about the marketing side of it, because yours is really a consumer-facing business, more so than than a commodity or a medical supply product. But I think I understand, the value add there, and it was a great answer for sure. Tony, you, again, similar to the first one, but you did a good job of articulating how you would improve catheters and the products today, and how the doctors are already going to market with those products and delivering to the patient. So that was a toss-up for me. I think Mary Ann would get that question. Third question on domain expertise. Again, going back to healthcare being unique, I think obviously you have to have our domain expertise in healthcare. If you're going to sell products to doctors, you're talking about highly skilled, highly educated people that are delivering care to patients. So if you're going to deliver a medical product or device to that type of person, and that's going to be your customer, you really have to know what you're talking about, and that 20 or 30 years of experience resonates with them. I think that's something that is very true in healthcare, and you both captured that one well. So I think Tony got that one on the third question. And then lastly, faster, better, or quality versus cost effective. I think you hit it on the head, Mary Ann. I think it's hard to do all three, to have fast production, also have good quality, and also be cost effective. And sometimes faster and better is not the best. So I would say I liked your answer a lot on the last one.
So who are you choosing ultimately?
I think overall it was very good by both of you. Overall, I'd go with Tony based on some of those answers as I outlined. But great job by both.
Oh, you're passing it to me. All right. I just want to commend both of you, because I think it takes a lot of courage to stand up here on the fly and take questions like this. When it comes to the business model, I can relate as a mom to Palm, because there's that focus on the parent, and there's that fear that something can happen to your child. And so I like the angle of your business model. Tony, I think for you, it's very clean, lean, simple. So from a business model standpoint, I give the point to you. When it comes to adoption, I do agree that I think, depending on your product, like collaborations and partnerships are really key. I think one word that stood out to me, Tony, that you had said was, oh, this is easy. And I was like, oh, you can never underestimate the bureaucracy of trying to get a budget approved, to get the decision makers involved, and actually get the adoption of the product. So, Mary Ann, I lean more towards giving you the point on that one. When it comes to domain expertise, Tony, I thought that you gave a very clear answer about the importance of having domain expertise in the domain that you're in. I don't necessarily think that, and I'm not saying that you said this, but I don't necessarily think that you have to be the domain expert as a startup founder, but I do think it's really important that, especially in the healthcare space, that you have that domain expertise wrapped around your team, so that it helps you make better decisions and also carries an influence when you're trying to do a sale. So on that, I had to give you the point for that question. And then as far as which do you choose, as far as safety or cost, I have to give the point to Mary Ann, because in the healthcare space, we already run slow, but we run slow because, Tony, I think you know this too with your background, there is so much caution that's exuded. Even if you have a product where you think it's kind of a no-brainer and it's a slam dunk, I do think that there's a saying that the turtle makes progress every time it sticks its neck out, and sometimes healthcare is that turtle. It's trying to accelerate, but in respect to healthcare, I think there's probably a middle ground, but I'm going to probably lean towards Mary Ann on that one. So this was a tough call for me, because there's 4 questions and I had you split down the middle for both, evenly. But I think if I had to pick based on your business model, which is going to be an important thing for me, and the domain expertise, I'm going to have to give it to Tony.
Okay. Ben.
Well, thank you both very much. I can't believe, and I don't know if people here realize how hard it is to come up here and answer questions on the fly and to come up with not a presented presentation. So this is just amazing. Going back to the, starting from the questions asked, thinking about how you're going to get to market, what the value proposition that you're offering. I think fundamentally, one of the core problems or core missions that you have to answer is you have to have a story about what you're delivering. And I think that was something actually I think it was missing a little bit in both of the presentations. However, I was able to get into the story on Mary Ann's presentation a little more than I could catch the story from Tony's presentation. And so I'm going to award that particular question over to Mary Ann, because the story is what draws a particular investor as well as your customer into your product. Looking a little bit further into how you get to market and also how do you think about expertise, I think number one, it's critical to think about expertise in the healthcare space. And even if you believe there's not a deep expertise required, I think no matter what you do, there's a deep expertise required. I think Tony, he answered that question a little bit better and crisper, and so I'm going to award that one over to Tony. On the go-to-market kind of strategies from both of you, this is hard. And if you aim to go slow, you will go even slower. And so while I absolutely agree with the strategy of making sure you build a product and get it to market at the appropriate pace, you have to aim to go fast. And we have a saying in our own company, don't bite off more than you can bite off, and you have to go do that. And so I just make that comment to you that you got to aim for going faster just to get to the market. So with that, I kind of avoid that same question to Tony. So in my vote, I think I'm in agreement with the other two judges here. Tony, you've got my vote.
All right, let's thank our competitors. Tony will be moving on to the next round. Our Enterprise SaaS Debate Track sponsors are Pitch Lists, Venture Scale Up, and New World Angels. Thank you for your support. All right, my judges to my right, Diane Court, founder and partner at Newware Studio, served as executive director of the Orlando Digital Main Street Orlando Tech Association. She's also led initiatives to strengthen the local network of creative entrepreneurs, tech starters, and leaders of established technology companies. Let's give her a round of applause as well. And Jim Thomas leads the Central Florida Tech Fund in partnership with Corriega Partners, which is dedicated to building early stage capital and community throughout the 7 counties of Central Florida. Oh yeah. And Jennifer Dunham, general partner with Arsenal, responsible for sourcing and evaluating investment opportunities as well as portfolio development and support. Another round of applause. Love that energy. All right, for our competitors. In the red corner, she's savvy by day and a lawyer by night, Ellie Mattern. In the blue corner, I've only met him once, but he is oh so friendly, Justin Mitchell. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job, Eddie, on getting those companies up. Can we bring it in just a smidge?
Sure.
Thank you. Running on a budget. All right, here we go. Thank you, founders, for joining us. I want a clean debate again, and let's keep it SaaS to a minimum. All right, as you probably already know, because you've been sitting around here, you know that we'll do a coin flip. Whoever wins gets the option to go first or to respond. Ellie, I'll let you pick heads or tails.
Tails.
Eddie Money, let's do this right. And it's heads. Justin, what would you like?
I'll respond.
Then I'll go first.
All right, our first questions. Give me 10 minutes on the shot clock, and let's get it on. First category, hiring. Jason Lemkin, the de facto godfather of SaaS, states 70% of the first VIP of sales hires don't make it past 12 months. It's one of the most common and most devastating mishires. The biggest issue being the founder hires skill sets suited for the wrong stage. For a startup SaaS company, what are the 2 qualities you deem most critical for what that first VIP hire to be successful should be, and why?
So just like in the healthcare debate, I have to say that domain area expertise is really useful. My company, SavvySuit, is a legal technology company. We build a lot of software in access to justice. And so having a VP of sales that understands not just the legal community, but access to justice, domain experience is going to be number 1. Number 2, I think you need personality. I think you have to pass the Google test where you have to be able to talk to that person for a long time, irrespective of what it's about. They have to be enjoyable, they have to be fun, they have to have stories, and they have to really communicate and connect and have charisma with people.
Justin.
Yeah, I think the 2 qualities that I look for when I'm hiring anybody, regardless of the position, is going to be communication and the ability to work on their own without micromanagement. So we typically look for someone who's a good communicator even during the interview process. Are they following up with us? Are they badgering me to get that job? Are they easy to talk to? Do they communicate well over channels like email, Slack, even a phone call? That's a huge part of what we're looking at early on, is just how they communicate with me personally. When it comes to a sales guy, I do think that personality has a lot to do with it. But in general, what I want is somebody that's able to just take a task and work on it without me having to continually check in. And again, that even comes back to communication. Can you do your job? Update me on the status of that job without me having to physically go over to your desk, check in with you, or in the case of a remote team, worry if you're even working.
I'd like to respond.
All right.
So I completely agree with you on one point. I think that the ability to get things done without me being over your shoulder is critically important. Communication, though, I think is really a unique challenge, especially in technology companies. You want to make sure you're not excluding introverted hires because they may not communicate the same way that extroverted people do. And so being mindful of how people communicate and making sure you're not, encroaching on their space or communicating too frequently with someone who really just wants to be left alone to do work is, I think, also kind of important.
Anything to add there, Justin?
Yeah, I think introversion is not an issue of communication. It's a style of communication. So it's not that they don't want to communicate. You just have to learn to communicate on their standards.
All right, moving on. Both paths can be successful, but in order to reach the coveted 100 million in ARR milestone, is it best to develop a strategy around higher volume and low pricing, or low volume but high pricing? Justin.
Yeah, that totally depends on your product. You can't really make a blanket decision on high volume or high pricing. It depends on kind of the product that you're selling. If you're selling a high-end game system, you're going to want a high price with low volume. If you're selling a mobile app in an app store that's ad-supported, you need 100% volume, and you don't even need to put a price on it. When it comes to a SaaS business like ours, we're looking to price this around growth inside of a company. We think our users are going to be our best marketers, so we put all of our money into features and building out a product that was going to build users that are advocates of our product and move that into a referral marketing system, have them share the thing out. And so it's not really an issue of price for us. It's an issue of getting the product to a point where the people that are using it see the value so much they share it with other people. And so we want to start really, really tight with a group of very, very passionate individuals who want to share the product inside of their own company, inside of other companies, and then maybe even reward them through like a referral system for that.
Ellie.
I agree. I think it very much depends on the product you're selling. I would much rather sell almost anything at a higher price point, and have to worry about fewer customers and acquiring less customers. That said, I think the most important thing is that with your customers, you're following on, and is there an opportunity to get them to pay you additional money and additional capital on products and add-ons? I think I'm slightly biased. I would much prefer to not be trying to acquire millions of customers at a 99 cents per cent point or a 99-cent price point. I want fewer customers, higher value, higher profit.
Isn't there something to be said, though, about the sales cycle? That sometimes at the lower price point, the sales cycle is not as long. Going after the bigger fish, those could be 6 to even 12-month sales cycles. If they don't go well, you could not hit your number by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, though, it doesn't matter. If your product price is high enough that the sales cycle covers for itself, that it's not an issue. However, if you are positioning for something like an acquisition, you're going to want to go for the shotgun approach, get more users, more traction on the platform, so that you're more primed for an acquisition.
I think that's a great point about the time to sell a product that's much higher is longer. That said, you still have to sell a lot of product at a lower price point to get yourself through that same amount of time. And so, as my colleague said, if you are accounting for that in the sales cycle, accounting for it in your prices, knowing that the sales cycle could be 6 months, 8 months, even a year or longer, depending on what you're selling, then you'll be okay with the longer sales cycle.
Great responses. All right, moving on. Optimizing for exit. In order to differentiate to your products and make your company attractive for future acquirers, which areas do you see as more important? Disrupting existing players, working with existing players and adding value, or creating a new subset of the market? Ellie.
So I think that working with existing players is really important in my particular field. There are a lot of law firms, there are a lot of legal aids, there are already a lot of organizations working in legal space as well as access to justice space. And so while there are disruptive technologies in it, it is not the same as creating an Uber. And so for me, I think partnering with currently existing infrastructures is the most important because those could potentially be the companies that acquire us later on.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking for a exit strategy, you're looking for your acquisition or your IPO. So you're either going to have to be developing technology that's going to be valuable for either an acquisition or an IPO, IP that nobody else can duplicate, or you're going to need to be getting that user approach, so you're acquiring so many users from your competition that they want to acquire you. A huge use case on our part as a collaboration platform is working with partners like Microsoft Teams and Slack, so that an acquisition makes a lot of sense since a lot of the users are already crossing over between the two companies, and they're acquiring users that they might be losing or acquiring users that they might not already have. So working with a partner like that is a really great way to leverage yourself for an acquisition. Now, conversely, working against someone for an IPO, if you're going on the technical side of things and you really want to own that IP, that's where you do need to be kind of distancing yourself a little bit more from your competition.
Anything to add there, Ellie? No. All right. Last question. Churn. How would you deal with high churn in your first or second cohort of customers? What are the best tactics for reducing churn before it happens? Ellie, is it you go first?
I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, for us personally, we use a lot of, we have a really great tech stack to reduce churn. A big part of that is re-engagement. So tools like Intercom allow us to see as soon as users are starting to slip off. We can have automatic messages sent to re-engage with them. We're also building out a new feature right now called Insights, which will send triggered emails that say the topics that you're talking about with your team today, what the team mood was for the day. Little things like that kind of re-engage with somebody throughout the day is a big part of reducing churn and preventing it. And in terms of even users that have churned, having those re-engagement emails set up to actually re-engage them is a huge deal. One thing that we're doing is if someone hasn't launched the app in a while, but they've received a message, we'll send an email to them saying, hey, you have a pending message. So that's a user who has churned that we're able to actually pull back into the app by sending a triggered email to them.
So I think churn is a unique problem in that if you have a solution that's granting value to your customers, then they're less likely to churn to begin with. And so in the event that you've sold something that maybe the client doesn't know how to use as well or is having trouble getting started with, I think especially while you're a startup, you should be reaching out to those customers and saying, how can I help you be successful with this product? And so for us, we do a lot of things that wouldn't scale maybe down the road where we help help legal aids advertise, we help them use the product, we help them onboard and make sure that they're really comfortable with the product moving forward so they get all the value out of it that they're hoping for so that we reduce churn.
All right, that took us down to the wire. Thank you guys. Let's give a quick round of applause. That was an awesome debate. All right, let's kick it over to the judges. Diane, please start us off.
How about that? Yeah. Can you hear me, Matt? Ellie?
I can.
Well, I want to thank both of you. As they said in the last round, this is always tough to get up here and answer questions on the spot. And Tyler's giving you some tough questions to answer. You bring very different products to the stage. So in some cases, both of your answers are right. In fact, almost every time, I would say, both of your answers were right for your product. So the challenge here is, who told us best about how you would handle the challenge? In the first case on hiring, I really appreciated Ellie bringing up storytelling, especially when we're talking about salespeople. There's just no question that when we're trying to get it out there and there's an awareness issue in that first month, that story has to stick. Personality, both of you were right on point there. I do think communication is critical, and Justin really brought that forward because small team or large team, that will sink you. So while I think it's very close, I would give the point to Justin on this one. On the high-low, once again, it really does matter, especially in SaaS. They are both the right direction. I felt that you both were very clear on how you could take either path, but Ellie, I thought it was clearest from you why you would take your high price, low volume, what you would do with that to deliver value and why that matters. So I give a point to you. And then on disruption, well, there's no question that each of you have products that have to go in a different direction. I just felt that in this case, yes, with law firms, we're going to work with them and they're potentially your acquisition. I think you're dealing with a more challenging situation, and the way you presented it here in terms of who your partners would be, potentially, and why you would work in that space, I would give it to you on that one. And then finally, churn. I think what really struck with me was, again, the tech stack is obviously important, and being able to respond immediately, that will ensure retention. But with an early stage company like the seed stage that you guys are in, I really think that your users are your best advocates, and they are your ambassadors early on. So LA, I give the point to you on comfort.
Was that? Diane, sorry, I didn't hear who you ended up going with. Ellie.
Thank you.
Great. So I agree with much of what Diane said, and obviously thank you very much. I know it's challenging to get up here and answer questions like that on the fly. Format, by the way, very innovative. So in terms of hiring, I think you both touched upon, that is the key, right, in this type of an organization, because sales is forward-facing, it's front and center, and it's very important and critical. I think you both touched upon the key elements of, what a salesperson needs to be successful, because ultimately you're trying to make your customers successful. I slightly gave the edge to Ellie on that one, just because I do think personality, certainly for an outward-facing salesperson, is critical. And somebody that has domain expertise and is passionate is going to be able to meet the communication, et cetera. In terms of the revenue and achieving ARR goals, right,
it's a toss-up, and it really does sort of depend on what you're selling and to who. And I do think it's important, as you both touched upon, to be cognizant of feedback from your customers, incorporating things that they think are going to help them ultimately be successful. So paying attention to what those additional functions and features are, and incorporating those into the business. I think, Justin, you really covered that well, so I gave you that one. In terms of exit, again, it is being an understanding of who's ultimately going to be that means of an exit. And so it's hard to be disruptive for any company in today's age, and it's also hard to enter a completely new market, I think. So collaboration is key, because the odds of you being acquired by a strategic person are quite high on that one. And so in turn, again, I think it relates to communication, engaging your customers, understanding what they want, what they're looking for, and how best to serve them. So overall, I think you did a great job. It was very tough and close, but I did give my vote to Justin.
All right, Jim, our tiebreaker. No pressure.
I thought you both did a great job. Obviously, it's an innovative platform to be up here, and the give and take I thought was great. On the first one, as far as hiring, Ellie, I thought you did a great job talking about really making sure that the person is connected to the cause. And then Justin, I thought getting him involved and getting him going, getting him set up the right way was so I give that point to you. The second one, Ellie, I lean towards you on this one, just because that's my, I personally rather see that. Obviously, it depends on the market, it depends on the product that you have, but obviously serving fewer clients at a higher price is something a little more near and dear to my heart, so I give you the point on that one. As far as the disruption in creating markets, Justin, I lean towards you on that one. I think you both answered that really well, but I think you articulated a little better of where you want to be placed and what you think you can create. And then on churn, I really liked what you had to say about re-engagement. I think it's spot on. But I think Ellie on that point, really talking about continuing to make more and more value and staying connected early on, and then adding services on from there. I gave you that point. So I'm split down the middle, two and two.
You got to make one decision, Jim. Who's going to move on to the next round for you?
Moving on, I'm going to give the edge to Justin.
Okay. All right, Justin will be moving on to the next rounds. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. You guys were great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Cheers. All right, as our judges get situated, in the finals, as stated before, we are implementing our Ross Perot format. And we'll have 3 founders debating. Some quick facts about Ross Perot, besides his love for charts and graphs. He was actually a savvy technology entrepreneur and billionaire. He liked saying that most people give up just when they're about to achieve success. They quit on the 1-yard line. They give up at the last minute of the game, 1 foot from winning the touchdown. The questions for the finals here are not going to be industry specific, and will focus more on general business acumen. We will now have 5 judges instead of 3. Can we please have Justin Mitchell to the stage? Can we have Tony Rubin to the stage? And Sean Pinnock to the stage. I'm going to have you be here. You guys will kind of move in and out, and it'll be a little bit of...
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so you'll each get around the horn, okay? And then I'll just kind of let it... You guys get it? All right, let's introduce our judges. Kathy Chu, managing partner at DeepWork Capital, an MIT undergrad and Stanford MBA. Tom Wallace, managing partner at Florida Funders, 25-year veteran of angel investing. And David Barco, co-founder of Carve Communications, developing and managing and executing successful PR campaigns for startups and brands around the world. And Aya Sarcheva, senior associate at the Rise of the Rest Seed Fund at Revolution. And last but not least, Dennis Pappy, co-founder and CEO of SeedFundersOrlando. Let's give a nice round of applause for our amazing judges. All right, thank you, founders. You've done a great job so far. Now again, I want another clean debate. I think you guys all know the rules at this stage. We'll do, actually each one of you got an equal amount of votes. So I'm not going to be able to choose which one went first. Who should go first? So I'm just going to give it to Sean since you kicked us off here today. So Eddie, can I get 10 minutes on the shot clock? All right, here we go with our first question. Remember, Sean, you'll go first. Justin, you'll go second. Tony, you'll go third. And then we'll open it up for some debate. Question 1. The company is finally ready for Series A. Unfortunately, it took a lot longer and with many more pivots than you thought. The only Series A term sheet you could get valued the company lower than the cumulative amounts of investments you've taken in convertible notes from previous seed investors. What do you do?
So that's a worst case scenario as a founder. So my goal would be not to take it if I absolutely do not have to. I'd much prefer to bootstrap and gain revenue in the company and work towards a longer term goal where we could get the Series A funding we wanted. Now, there's exceptions to the rule where if you're in dire straits and if the business is going to fail, then you're going to have to take the term sheet. And that's something you'd sit down with your board and you'd have that conversation. But ideally, you'd find a way out of it. I'd rather cut some of my losses, cut some of my expenses, and figure out a way to bootstrap to get to the Series A funding I wanted.
Justin.
Yeah, similar answer. Bootstrap is a great option. In general, though, you should never get in that position to begin with. Fundraising is not an answer to profit or income. It's a way to scale instantly, but it's not a way to keep the business running. If you've gotten your business in a situation in which fundraising is the only way to continue running your company, you're not profitable, and you need to figure out how you can start monetizing your users better, onboarding more customers. Or in our case, we have a backlog of about 3,000 users, including Google and Hilton and Bose, who we could onboard at any point. And we're holding off right now, but if we were in a situation like that, we would start onboarding those customers, pivoting more into enterprise, getting more sales, moving into a different time of the company, and we could fundraise more successfully.
Tony.
So fortunately, we've done a great job of fundraising, and I think we're close to being fully funded, but it's a really great question. And I think ultimately, I'm running a company for the twin goals of maximizing value to shareholders as well as fulfilling our mission to stakeholders. And if it's a function of taking a down round but being able to deliver our mission and keep the continuity going, which I think is so important, or just bootstrapping and losing momentum, I would swallow hard and take the down round, because the most important thing is to keep momentum going and get the product to market and then realize the full value to everyone, which would be at many multiples higher than whatever the early investment valuation is.
Any responses there?
My only counter would just be that if you're going to take a down round, it's unlikely that the simple inflection of cash is going to solve the profitability problem. So if you weren't able to reach a point in which you could hit profitability in which your round is going to be, you know, a multiple of what you did before, taking on a down round the next time you go to fundraise, I think it's unlikely that you have solved the problem in your company if you didn't do it at that moment and you just took cash instead.
Sean, do you agree with all that, or anything to disagree?
I agree. I would say if you're doing a down round, then something's wrong with your business model, and you probably need to re-strategize. I do think there's exceptions if you're building a high-tech solution that's going to require more R&D. That could be the exception, but generally speaking, you're probably something wrong with your business model, and you should seek profitability and revenue.
Okay. Moving on, question number 2. What is the proper way to evaluate employees? And what amount of time is needed to help employees correct errors before letting them go? Justin.
So, you know, we do basically bi-weekly check-ins with the employees to make sure that they're, you know, in terms of happiness level, they're comfortable with all the tasks that are on their plate. They understand what's being asked of them. They're not being asked to do anything that they're not comfortable with, or they feel like their skill set is outside of their range. But another thing that we do is make sure that we've got a culture inside of the company in which kind of official reviews are not something that is expected or needed. We're checking in with our employees regularly, making sure that they're comfortable with their tasks, making sure that they know what's being asked of them. A big thing, again, I talked early on in the other debate, was just communication. Communication for me is a huge signaler very early on in an employee's kind of life cycle. If they're not communicating, there's a problem. Either the problem's on my end or the problem's on their end, and we need to solve it immediately. So instead of doing kind of like regular check-ins, we're just kind of communicating on a regular basis, asking them, hey, what's up? I didn't hear from you yesterday. Is that because you're sick? Is that because you're unavailable? Is that because something came up? Because otherwise I need to know. Communication is a huge part of kind of that review process and making sure that that's kind of that open line is always available to them. And I think that that's what the make or break is for an employee.
Tony.
So I'm running a startup company, so every resource, every employee, every contractor is key. And what I'm looking for every relationship I have is both success on quantitative and qualitative goals. The industry and our challenges change and pivot, so certainly we need to go against metrics. You know, how many touches have you made, but also to the extent that you're providing feedback, being able to offer suggestions. And if for some reason, you know, I'm seeing that we're not getting the performance on assigned tasks, or there's not a cultural fit, what we do, and we speak very regularly, at least once a week, is to talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, and from a perspective, again, to answer your question of how long it would take, I think, you know, really, again, in the startup mode, 30 days, maybe 60 at the longest would be, you know, the longest that I would give someone to get back on track with what we need. Because again, we're lean and we all need to be focused and we all need to be executing.
Sean.
Yeah, so I think, you know, when you're starting a company, who you hire is arguably the most important thing you're going to do, or at least one of the most important things you're going to do starting a business. And for me, you know, I'm really grateful. I've got 10 employees now, 15 employees, and everyone who I've hired has stuck with me the whole way through. And I think a big part of that has been finding people who are aligned with your vision. So who want to see your vision succeed and are aligned with that. I think those people are really important to the long vision of your company. And then I think after that, you know, productivity is a very real thing in terms of individual motivation, and it's not something I fully realized until I started running a company. You know, people, they lose motivation. Things happen in their life, and you know, production is extremely important. We run an agile development schedule, and every 2 weeks we have very long full-day meetings. We get the team excited. I have a full-time producer now. His job is literally getting the team motivated. We have a very Silicon Valley mindset. You know, we grind, but at the same time too, we still have work-life balance where we're able to commit to what we're doing while still retaining some, you know, semblance for yourself as well.
Anything to add there? All right. Question number 3. You have 3 months of runway, and the investor you have been courting for 3 months. Sorry, we'll start this again. You have 3 weeks of runway, and the investor you've been courting for 3 months finally hands you a term sheet. Just before signing, a red flag concerning the investor is brought to your attention. Do you sign the term sheet, and take the risk, or do you walk away? Tony.
Okay, I'll have to answer that two ways. As I said a moment ago, our funding is going really well, so we're in a position of being very selective about who we're using to finalize our funding. So if there are red flags, or if there are cultural incompatibilities, or just a mismatch, we would quickly say no. In a more theoretical position, if I think I desperately needed the money and had only a couple of months of runway, I would really look at what the red flags were. If there were some sort of illegality or immorality or something that would damage the reputation of the company, I'd have to pass. If it was something a little more qualitative, we'd look at it and we'd see how the fit was with the organization. And again, as I said with the previous question, I think the most important thing is to maintain continuity of operations, to maintain a momentum, and to maintain or fulfill the promises that we've given to our stakeholders, whether they're other investors, whether they're customers, or other end users, which in our case would be patients. So it would kind of be a balancing, assuming it wasn't anything toxic.
Sean.
Yeah, so I'm with Anthony on this one. As a company right now, we're fortunate to be profitable, and we can be selective, with our investors. But even if I wasn't in that position, depending on what the red flag is, I almost definitely wouldn't take it. I consider the investor to be a part of that team, and like I was saying before, it's critical for your team to be on board with your vision and what it is you're trying to do. And if for some reason there's a problem with what they want to do and what you want to do, then those visions don't align. It doesn't make sense. I'd look for the money elsewhere.
Justin.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take the counterpoint here and say that if we've done 3 months of courting this investor, within a week we've done due diligence, we've talked to their existing investments, we know their portfolio companies, we've established a personal rapport with them. Any red flag that would come up after 3 months is something that would be a non-issue in my book. We've already established a rapport with them, we already like them, we already know that they're a good fit for us. I should have already done my due diligence week 1 of meeting with them. If we've gotten 3 months down the line and something comes up that's just kind of like a random red herring, I think we would still move forward with the deal.
What would be the next steps that you would take after hearing that?
Yeah, I'd schedule a call with them, talk with them about it personally. You never know. A lot of times portfolio companies can be burned. People that maybe didn't get investment from that investor can be burned. You don't know the truth of the matter. You don't know the full story. I would connect immediately with the investor, get on a call with them, and try and hear their side of it before even making any type of trigger decision.
Anything you guys want to add to that?
I think both of the comments were good. I think it is important at an early stage that your investors are aligned with you, that you're comfortable from a strategic and a vision fit, and it would be doubtful that anyone that we had talked to for 3 months, there would be some red flags. So, I do agree with what Justin said from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. It'd be doubtful. So it really just depend on what the red flag is, right? If it's against our core values, then that would be an issue. But
all right, next question. What is the most important role for a founder when scaling a company, and why? Is it day-to-day operations, recruiting, retaining, fundraising, product development, or something else? Sean, I'll let you start us off.
it's a really good question. For my company especially, I would argue that product development is the most important thing. I think a great example is a company like Apple, right? Their vision was product. My vision for the company is product. And don't get me wrong, all those things are very important, but you need all of those things in order to really build a good product. But when Steve Jobs left Apple, the vision became branding and marketing and these other things, right? And it flopped for a while, and they brought him back, and then it's doing great, right? And now, sadly, he passed away, and I think Apple's having some trouble. And I believe that's because we lost our visionary, our product visionary. And I consider myself to be that person, especially in the VR space. So I would argue product.
Justin.
Yeah, I think I would say other, and other I think actually wraps all of those things into one thing, and I call that having a pulse on the market. I think the CEO or the founder's job is to always have that pulse on the market. That means having the foresight the next 5, 10 years, where's the market going, what products are people looking for, what's selling, what's not selling, what's an acquisition strategy, what's our IPO strategy, and having that pulse on the market is huge. It not only determines your product features or your product development, it determines your fundraising, when you're going to fundraise, who you're going to be chasing in that fundraising round. So having that pulse on that market is so important. I think that's something that has uniquely positioned us in Yak, and what we're doing is that we understand remote work, we understand who we're building for, we understand our audience, and having that kind of understanding of who's going to be using the product and maybe 5 years from now what work is going to look like has really changed how we build the product, because we see our competitors building for how work works today, right? And you see a lot of people in the space that think, well, there's competitors already existing, right, and they're successful now, but we won't be successful in 5 years. And so having that pulse on the market is really the most important thing that I think a founder should be doing.
Tony.
Yeah, I'd like to build on those comments. From my perspective, the role of the CEO, or at least me as CEO, is to provide a laser-sharp strategy as to where we are and where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. In my company's case, it's to eliminate risk, it's to eliminate complexity, make the tasks that we need to do as simple as possible, while also fusing the company with a customer-oriented culture. Each of our urologist customers is literally worth $1 million in market value to us, so we will do anything as part of our culture to make them happy. So as strategic leader and cultural leader, I want to make sure that we're on those tasks. However, being a startup company, I also have to play an active role, and my strengths and background are in finance and strategy. So I lead a number of the negotiations, a number of the decisions about allocations of resources, and we're fortunate that we have 2 members on our team, executives, who are board-certified urologists, so they are the medical experts, and to a question that I had in the first round, are the deep domain experts and are able to communicate directly with our patients. So we all have our roles, but as leader, I focus on vision, strategy, culture.
Quickly, any responses?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as a startup, one of the things that I would say is you need to not necessarily always be so focused. We always challenge startup founders to not build in a vacuum. You need to be pivoting around the market, understanding your users, and building a product that can easily be agile to the market's changes.
Yeah, I would say, like I was saying before, while it's important to understand the market as a whole, I think it's even more important to see where the market will be in the future. And I think just understanding your market isn't enough. I think being the visionary and being able to see where it will be in 5 years from now is what it takes. Steve Jobs said people don't know what they want until you show it to them, and that's what you need to do as the CEO.
All right, that's time. Guys, that was awesome. Quick round of applause for our finalists. All right, kicking it over to the judges. Mr. Barco.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Sean, come over here.
One time and I couldn't hear a word he said.
First, is this on? No.
Alex, Mike.
Mike? Mike? Does that one work? It does. Before I begin, I just want to think we all need to give a round of applause to Tyler for leading this thus far. It is extremely noisy. He's doing a great job thus far. Great job by the three of you. It is hard to do this, not just answer questions, but certainly up here. For Justin, I think what excited me most about your responses, more than anyone else, is to the first question, is the focus on actually generating revenue, not just taking someone else's money. In the PR world, we deal with lots of startups and just watching the industry. Focusing on actually generating revenue by selling a product should be more of the key in things like this and startups in general. Tony, I like, skipping to the last question about focus, strategy, vision, and culture, that definitely is taking that next step. But also, Sean, I agree with you that product development is the key, because that's what you're selling, and focusing on making sure the product gets from one level to the next Justin, going back to you, and you had this in the previous round as well, a focus on communication seems to be a big focus of yours. I think that's essential, especially in what we do in PR, is telling your story. But I think it's a double-edged sword. Going back to your answer about a sales guy, it's kind of sometimes easy to fake communication, it's not easy to fake your understanding of product market and understand the verticals you're selling into. So sometimes focus on communication can be good and bad. This is a tough one. There were all three really good answers. But I'm going to have to, my vote, I would say, is for Tony. And the reason why is throughout the 3 rounds, his responses were always focused on what he's doing in his company and his vision and actually what's happening for him and what he's focused on for a day-to-day basis. So he's really focused on that growth versus a broader picture. So that's where my vote goes for this round.
So, can everybody hear me? Yeah. So, great job, guys. So, what we normally have in a pitch competition, of course, is founders that talk about the problem, the solution, et cetera. And what I really like about what Tyler has done here is that we're really focused on the founder. Are they in it for the long haul? And are they passionate? And are they going to make this company go? And so that's a key for early stage, seed stage investing is the founder and the founding team. As far as the questions, the first question essentially about a down round, personally, I would gravitate towards the notion that I think this is one of the biggest problems actually in Florida is that there tends to be an overvaluation at the friends and family stage. So entrepreneurs here in Florida are going to face a lot of issues in raising the next round with overvaluation, and you just kind of have to get over it because it's really going to happen. And if you're really going to propel your company forward, pour fuel on the fire. I would go with Tony on that one. I think you all had great responses on evaluating employees. I liked all your responses. As far as the deal, I really liked Justin's answer. If you're into it with a long, due diligence with your investor, if a red flag comes up, you can work through it. You've done a lot of due diligence already. And the role of the founder, well, I think that's going to be really personal. If you've got a founding team, there's going to be natural differentiation between what are the strengths of each of the founders. So I think you all gave personal answers about that. This is a tough one for me, but I think I will go with Tony.
Hi. So first of all, I apologize. I couldn't hear very well, and I also couldn't see without my glasses. So, for what it's worth, hi, Justin. For what it's worth, I thought I would just kind of go down the questions and pick and tell you my favorite answer of each of them, and then have a grand pick. So the first question, when the question was about down round, I think you all get great answers. Obviously, you should try to protect your investors, but at some point, I do think that the earlier you bite the bullet, the better it is, and for that, I did like Tony's answer the best. And the second one, regarding what's most important regarding picking your employees, the alignment of vision, that is important. I think being entrepreneurs and gritty people, we all believe that we can make everything work. And sometimes if you just start with someone who's aligned in the first place, it's just so much easier. So that was a great answer. The other question, you have 3 weeks to live, and do you take a creepy investor or not? Essentially, right? That's what it is. I have to say, yeah, it's kind of a balanced view of, what is the red flag, So, yeah, and I think that one is more kind of a test-taking penmanship, trying to challenge the question a little bit. But I did agree, yeah, it depends on the red flag. Finally, the scaling success factor, and I do think you guys all did really well on that one. Obviously, you have to have a decent product to even go anywhere. And then beyond that, hopefully if you're scaling, you're past that, it's everything else. And but being an investor, very risk averse, like hearing that someone is out there constantly trying to knock down the risk. So, love all your answers, but, if I had to pick, so mean to make me pick, I will pick Tony.
Okay, first of all, I couldn't hear a bloody thing, and I still can't hear anything. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I tried to listen as well as I can, but I have severe ADD, so that made this quite challenging. I heard some good answers. I think the first one, the down round thing, I like the bootstrapping if you can, but you got to do whatever you can to survive. So I don't remember who said that, but the one on the employees, fire fast, fail fast, do everything fast when you're a startup. I didn't hear that answer, but I like that answer. I guess that's my answer. The investor alignment, you can take money from different people, obviously, and you got to be smart about that. I think the biggest thing there for me is, as an investor, is you can't over-communicate with us. And most startups are, they're all over us till we write the check, and then after we write the check, their communication really sucks. So I would say communicate frequently and often with your investors. And then the most important role of a founder, in my opinion, is always vision and team building. Those two things. You get those two things right and keep your team really focused. Somebody said something about not focusing. That's the biggest mistake we see founders make, is lack of focus. So again, I don't know who said what and what's going on. So I'm going to say I'll split my vote 1/3 for each of you. Good job, guys.
Great job, everyone. I think it's hard to think about kind of how you would tackle different challenges as you're growing a business, as you're starting a business. So being able to answer these questions really thoughtfully, I think is impressive, and you all did a really phenomenal job with that. To get into some of the specific questions, I think on the question of a down round, I think it's fair to say that you want to get funds in some way and perhaps focus on, say, pivoting to an enterprise or focusing more on sales. But at the end of the day, I think being able to understand that, yes, like you might need to take a lower valuation, but then continue growing is also important, just so that you can kind of keep things going. So on that end, I have to give it to Tony. On the question of how to properly evaluate employees, I think it's definitely critical to have regular check-ins and perhaps in an informal manner, but being able to build in something formal so that folks know the metrics on which they're being evaluated and why is also going to be key. I think even at a startup phase, and it doesn't have to be super regular, maybe every half year or so, but I think having something formal in place is generally really helpful. I did appreciate that most of you did talk about having these regular informal check-ins. And I think what, John, you had mentioned about having and bringing on folks that align with your vision is, again, super critical. Like, I think at the early stages, it's sometimes difficult to figure out how to evaluate people, but if people are really all in on what you're doing and why you're doing it, then that'll help you find the right people. So great job on that answer. On the red flags, so I agree with Justin here fairly strongly that throughout the diligence process, you should be evaluating investors fairly early on and really keeping in mind, are these people that you want to work with? Because some relationships between founders and investors last longer than marriages. So you want to be fairly critical in how you're taking and whose money you're taking. So I think on that front, doing that due diligence ahead of time is really key. But I think at the same time, if at the last minute you find out, okay, there is some massive red flag that I didn't see, don't take the money. But for this, I'd have to give it to Justin. And then on the final question of the role of the founder, I agree with what's been said by my fellow judges. Vision is going to be really the critical key thing here. It's being able to articulate what it is that your company is doing, what you want it to accomplish, what people's role in the company is, and how you're going to weather the storm. That is going to be really important. And Tony, I think you gave the best answer here, so I'll have to go with you.
All right. Thank you, judges. That determines our winner. Will be Tony. Ruben, round of applause. But even a bigger round of applause for all our founders today. Obviously, this isn't an easy thing to do. but they came up here and did a great job answering these questions. We're going to do a quick little check ceremony. Eddie Money, who's been doing a fantastic job doing the coin flip today. Give Eddie Money a round of applause. Dennis, do you want to come up? Thank you, guys. It was fun. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. Thanks. Thank you, guys. All right. Thank you, Seed Funders Orlando. Also, the finalists will have an option of a $25,000 investment through DeepWork Capital and Kathy. But this prize will immediately go to Tony. Thank you, Dennis.